Hi, my name is Stephanie and welcome to my channel. So today we're going to be talking about this week's book, which is Never Out of Season, How Having the Food We Want When We Want It Threatens Our Food Supply and Our Future by Rob Dunn. So this book is a science non-fiction, actually just published earlier this year in July. It is not terribly long without the notes and bibliography. This book is 263 pages, so really not that bad. Robert Dunn takes the first half to focus on specific foods, the banana, coffee, etc., and a brief bit of their story, combining a little bit of history of the plant, the current threats to the crops, and growth, and people working to save the planet. Kind of like an overarching story for that specific plant. Now, the second half covers the efforts of specific people or programs like seed banks, with each chapter covering a single person, seed bank, or effort. His main goal seems to be pushing the protection and increase in biodiversity and the information banks surrounding this biodiversity in order to use these against future threats to the global food supply, which really is what this book is about. It's about current threats and ways that he sees to fix those threats against major starvation, as he puts it. Now, as for the writing, I found it very readable. It doesn't contain a ton of scientific jargon. There are a couple of words that you do have to learn, but once you learn them, he uses it like a couple times every chapter. For example, he uses fecund or fecund. I don't know. Put it down there. And this is just like a synonym for fertile or to produce a lot, according to Google. And that can be a little bit repetitive, along with the fact that his main thesis is a little repetitive throughout this book, which I think is pretty common amongst nonfiction writers, who just want you to remember the point of the book once you put it down, so they kind of create like a single sentence or two sentences that summarize their entire point and write it into every single chapter, that same sentence or two, which is fine. It doesn't really bother me that much because I know why they do it. Now, as for like things I liked about this book and what I don't like, I always feel weird saying I enjoyed a book on a slightly depressing topic, but I did enjoy this read. I learned a lot, and I want to do more digging into some of the things he talks about, including like plant entomology and the current like study of like pests and pathogens. I think that's quite interesting. I always think things that are basically ecology based are fascinating. I also like the way he set the book up with most of the bad news, including like basically major food staples are very susceptible to pests and pathogens and the huge swath of death in those fields. So he starts with like the depressing stories of single foods, and then at the end, it's a lot more hopeful because it is still a call to action. It is still like, hey, a lot of work needs to be done. There isn't a lot of funding for this, but it does focus on the fact that there are quite a number of people working to remedy this. There are people who are already striving to achieve some of the goals that he thinks are necessary. And I really enjoy that when a book ends on a far more hopeful note. I mean, even the epilogue is just like, okay, now I have all this information, what can I do? And it's just a few pages on like summary of all of, like what he's doing and things that like everyday people can do outside of just like dedicating their life to studying seeds and pests. So he did, I think, kind of mistitled this book, and I won't say mistitled because I think that's maybe wrong. But there are a lot of views that says the title is a little misleading, and I am apt to agree because he does at one point mention the never out of season aspect of monoculture and monocropping or cash cropping, but he doesn't really go into that aspect of it much. He really does focus more on pushing the need for increased biodiversity because of the dangers of pests and pathogens. He doesn't really say that having food that's out of season necessarily is the issue itself. It seems really he brings up a lot of other points that point to why this is an issue far more than wanting food that's in July that's for December or vice versa. But I didn't really find that to be too much of a drawback. It doesn't really bother me that much. Okay, it's the title of a book. It's supposed to catch your eye. I still think the information inside is interesting and important. He does make a couple of other points outside of food that I think is interesting, and kind of specifically want to mention that because I really enjoyed it. The first is actually surrounding cassava, which is the main food staple for many people in Africa. And this doesn't necessarily just apply to food. I think this is the same that goes far beyond the cassava specifically stuff. Whereas hundreds of millions of dollars are spent studying coffee and wine, the funds available to study and monitor cassava has always been modest. They always will be. Cassava lives in the empires of dirt, where the poor raise civilizations out of red mud. And I just think that's a really interesting point that he talks about. Okay, well, a lot of times the people who are at the bottom, I guess he's going to people at the bottom, they have the least resources, but they still manage to do amazing things. And the second point is maybe we should focus on something that's, a main food staple for a continent, but it's not flashy, it's not exciting, and the West doesn't eat it. So it doesn't matter, and that itself, the fact that it doesn't apply to the West equals a lack of funding, goes far beyond just food. The second is actually about Syria and why the main seed bank for the Middle East was stored in Aleppo. And considering what's going on in Syria right now, I thought that's just a reminder that this was a place where people lived, and it was actually a pretty thriving place that I hadn't really thought about. So Syria was the stable place, the place Iraqis and Afghans sent their seeds for safekeeping. Syria was the logical place to save the seeds, because among the countries of the Middle East, it was where things worked. Doctors were trained, scholars were trained. Nearly everyone was educated. It was, by most metrics, akin to the United States in levels of education and affluence, better off even than the state in which I live, North Carolina. This is worth remembering as we consider what happened next. And I thought that was just a really good reminder that, everybody everywhere has its problems, but we should really be careful about judging places. And there are going to be pros and cons to everything, and two sides to every story. I do recommend this book. I am giving it 3 stars because I really enjoyed it. I really recommend it. I don't know if it's something I'm going to read again, though. It's not something that I liked learning, but we'll probably read another book in the subject instead of rereading this one. But I do recommend it. Tell me what you think. Have you read it? Did you know it was coming out? It is a pretty new book. Have you read books concerning the same topic? What were they? Do you like them? Do you recommend them? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the